3 to 4 months are going to be busy in terms of planning, not only thinking about things coming up after high school, but we have course selections and other things coming up for juniors specifically. We're going to talk a lot about that tonight. And I just wanted to start out by talking about the format. So most of the guidance staff is here tonight, and we're each going to talk about different subjects pertaining to post-secondary planning. We've been following this format for a number of years, and we will open it up for questions after each counselor finishes up. A couple things before we start. I just wanted to point out to you that the Burlington Public Schools launched a new website, and with that, the Guidance Department also launched a new website and a new blog. So I know I've been talking to several parents, and I think parents are still accessing our older blog. That blog is no longer being used, so the site is still there. So this is the Burlington High School webpage. So guidance is a little bit more buried, or the counseling department's a little bit more buried, but we are there. So we would encourage you to access our website and the blog as well. You can actually bookmark the blog, and what we do with the blog is we'll post notices throughout the course of the school year. And you can actually, and this is good for students too, you can actually put your email into a text box on the guidance blog, and whenever a new post is made, you'll get an automatic email. And that actually can be used for all the different blogs that we have throughout the system. So you can see the upcoming events. The subscribe button is right over on the right. Again, that's the button that you would use to get new updates as they come in. Lisa, can you just click on the counseling department blog? There you go. So again, this is where we'll post our events. We do a guidance breakfast series as well. We do have an upcoming breakfast. We'll talk a little bit about that later. It's in regard to the course selection process. So I just wanted to make a little shout out for the new website and encourage you to start to use the newer website and the newer counseling department blog. Okay, so this is the counseling staff, and I see a lot of familiar faces here. And I'm glad to see that we have so many juniors here too. So, and you know, I apologize if this is a little bit boring. I would love to be able to, you know, maybe use the stage, sing a song, but maybe that's for future years. Right now, what's that? I'm stopping myself. And, but in any event, this information, we really find it valuable. One thing to keep in mind, especially juniors that are here, we're cramming pretty much the whole spring into this presentation tonight. So what I mean by that is we're trying to give you an overview of what to expect, but all this information is going to be communicated to you by your guidance counselor, all right? Juniors have a directed study every day this semester. That just means they have a free period every day, and the idea behind that is so they can connect with their counselor to start to develop plans for post-high school. So again, the time is built right into our schedule. The counselors that are here tonight, we have Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Leary, we have Miss Rogers, Mrs. Wojtaszek's in the back. A couple of counselors are not here tonight, and that would be Mrs. Concession and Miss Diozzi. And Miss Minty as well, sorry. And we have two secretaries in the office, Patty Lewis and Teresa Kavanaugh. We usually talk a little bit about this just so parents have an understanding, and juniors that are here, but believe it or not, we have a strategy every year in our office. Just like teachers have a strategy with a curriculum they teach in a class, we also have strategies in the guidance office, and that's basically each year what we're trying to communicate to our students. And it's self-explanatory to some extent, but junior year, just know this is the year, as you can see, it's really about post-secondary exploration. So our goal really, by junior year, we'd like to have established a relationship already with the student and hopefully the family. If not, we will get to know each other quickly. But we really want to help you make the best decision possible. and about 90% of Burlington High School students do go off to 2 or 4-year colleges, but we also have students that will go into the military or the workforce. So again, our goal is to make sure it's an appropriate plan, that the student's vested in the process, and again, a big part of that is, our hope is that we've established a relationship in grade 9 and 10, so now grade 11 we're off and running. Okay, and now I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Leary.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, so as we begin to meet with juniors more seriously to break this all down, by the way, tonight you're getting a lot of information in an hour and a half. We break this down with the juniors and working with them in small groups. So they're getting this information in chunks over the course of the next few months. And juniors all have, well, I shouldn't say all, with the exception of some AP labs here and there, but juniors, the schedule's designed so that they have PE first half of the year and then they have study halls second half of the year so that we can meet with them. So these are some of the things we're asking them to think about from the very start, what their career interests are, you know, are they college bound, as Mr. Adebato said, and if they're not, that would be something that we would typically meet one-on-one and discuss those plans with the student separately. The small groups do tend to focus a lot on college because such a high percentage of our students do go to college. And have you given any thought to a possible major? And it's okay if you haven't. We reassure students of that. And we really try to drive home their responsibilities throughout this whole process. Communication is huge. And we use Naviance. Every student applying to college as a senior must use Naviance. It is how we submit materials later on in senior year to colleges, but we use it now for career research, college searches, just to get them going with the whole online research. So using Naviance is important. Checking email, I know this generation doesn't love email, but checking it is important. Junior and senior year especially, you will miss out on things if you don't check it. And then almost all, if not all, of the counselors do use Google Classroom at this point to also convey information that way and get messages out to students. So checking Google Classroom at least weekly is important as well. Setting aside time to do research, so not waiting for our group meetings all the time. Students really do sort of need to treat this as maybe another class and as weekly homework, the whole research process and going out and visiting and that sort of thing. They do need to set aside time to do all of this and set aside time to be doing things on their own, not just with us. Developing their list of colleges and universities, so we do have a goal for them to have a list by the end of this year. Obviously, it doesn't need to be set in stone, but at least have some prospective colleges that they're interested in. And it is expected that students will make individual appointments with us in between their group meetings, you know, to review everything, any individual plans that they may have, and to go over any questions that they have. So students do have, they do have to use a lot of different websites. We'll be talking a little bit about the Common Application. There are a lot of websites that they'll have to bounce around between, the college admission testing websites, but everything does need to come back to Naviance. They need to get all of their colleges in there. They have to be using Naviance because, as I said, that's how we end up submitting materials in senior year. And it's a great way for us to be able to jump into the students' account and see which colleges they are thinking about and see if we can add any, make recommendations for them. It's also how we start the online research process and compare colleges. We complete assessments with them through this website. One of my favorite tools is Scattergrams, which we will review as well, which is a fantastic tool using BHS alumni data, and it's a great way to determine if a school is a reach, a realistic, or a safety for a student. Links, and also links to college applications to send materials, which I did touch upon. So as they begin their research, which does always tend to start with online research. There are lots of different websites that they can use, but this is the criteria we want them to be thinking about so that they can narrow their search and come up with a list of schools that they are interested in. So thinking about a major, if you do have one in mind, and of course location is going to be important. And we always recommend, even if you're open to going anywhere in the country or even outside of the country, starting with some regional searches so that you can have a narrower search and maybe separate them by region so it's not too overwhelming and you don't get an initial overwhelming list of schools all around the country. Size is going to be important, of course. Cost, housing, athletics. Some students are going to want to play sports in college, and then any special programs that students might want to participate in, for example, marching band, club sports. There's a whole list of things. So thinking about these things you want in a college. So these are some of the other college search resources besides Naviance. Students can use any search engines they want. They always do have to come back to Naviance. But some students may have used College Board in the past, which is the SAT and PSAT website. Some students may have used the ACT website. Social media can be really helpful. Googling information, of course, can always be helpful. We do always recommend, if you want specific information about a college, if you start with Google, you do want to end up going to individual college websites to get the most up-to-date information, especially if you're researching majors, certain programs at colleges, you want to visit the college website directly. Of course, the counseling department, our blog, we have college snapshots that we list when we go out on PD days and do our own tours and visits. And then there is a list of college fairs in the packet that they received, right? Upcoming college fairs? Okay. So college fairs can be a great way to start off as well with one-stop shopping. You attend a college fair, there are hundreds of colleges that might come, reps from each of the colleges, different tables set up. Students can go and talk to different reps from different colleges and gather information and give them their contact information as well. So that's a good jumping off point as well. So campus visits, our students, as I've been meeting with my juniors, I've asked them, and many of them have already gone on and done some visits, and I know sometimes students tag along with older siblings, which is awesome. It's never too early to start looking. Ways to visit a campus, there are sponsored tours, so you do need to visit the college website directly to find dates and times. And typically you have to register online ahead of time or call the admissions office to register. And it's typically a walking tour that will be led by a current student at the college, followed by an informational session, usually about an hour long, where students can ask questions. There are open houses as well, which is usually a much larger event where you can often hear from deans of different departments at a college. So if you were really interested in nursing at a college, you might be able to get individualized information by going to an open house and looking into the nursing program or any other specific program. So those are typically held once in the spring and once in the fall, so it's good to look out for those as well. Overnight visits are not options everywhere, but they are options at some schools, and this would give a student an opportunity to stay overnight in the dorm, shadow a student, attend a class, eat in the dining commons, so really get an experience, in-depth experience with that. Self-directed tours, sometimes students do, if they have an older friend at a college, they might go and visit them, of course, or if you find yourselves on a family vacation, you might be nearby a couple colleges that you might want to do a self-directed tour, even just to drive through a campus and check it out for yourself. There are virtual tours and online forums that you can check out as well. And we always recommend calling or emailing admissions directly for more information about touring a school. And we do encourage students to reach out rather than parents. They love hearing from the students. And next is Mr. Adebato.
Just a quick question to juniors that are here. How many have been to a college fair? Okay. So one thing I just wanted to point out, for a college fair, there are upwards of 200 colleges and universities there. It can be a little overwhelming. What I would suggest is to bring a list of schools that you'd like to. It's okay to explore, but I would go there with a list so you at least kind of feel like you've met with some specific colleges and universities. It can be a pretty overwhelming process, so you want to try to have an idea. And a lot of college fairs nowadays, you can actually access in advance of what colleges are going to be there. I know the one that we co-host at the Shriners in Reading, we post, actually this year I think it's going to be at Reading High School, but it's a Middlesex League College Fair, and they actually post, we'll put it on the blog too, of all the colleges and universities that will be attending. All right, so you're going through the research process, you're looking at colleges, you're trying to figure out, am I going to be able to get into this school? Am I not going to be able to get in? What's the likelihood of me being accepted? So as you're going through that process, and these terms go back years and years, we've never changed them because we think they're pretty straightforward. But you want to categorize colleges, all right? Colleges that you're looking at. And you're going to be doing that based on the expectations of that college. We categorize them by calling them reach, realistic, and safety. And so what we like students to do is to categorize these, put colleges that you're considering applying to into these categories. So with a reach college or a reach school, it means that one of the big things is the percent accepted at that college. It's a very, very low percentage. So if a student is looking at a particular school, regardless of grades, if it's a low percentage being accepted, right off the bat, you know it's a very competitive school. So you have to, keep that in mind as you're navigating through the process. And it says below the requirements, but you might still, I know this probably makes it sound more confusing, but you might really feel like you meet those requirements. Still, it's a very low percentage of students accepted because they have 50 or 60,000 students applying there with very similar grades. So therefore, it becomes very competitive. So we want you to keep that in mind. And one of the things we tell students too is when you're developing your list, you want to have colleges in each category. It's okay to apply to a reach school. We wouldn't want students to apply to only reach schools because that could be problematic. It's not the type of situation where if you apply to 10 reach schools, you might get into one. Really, each college is looking at you individually, so you got to keep that in mind. Realistic, it means that based on the information in terms of student grades and the percent accepted, that, and again, counselor feedback, we feel very comfortable that you have a very strong likelihood to get in. We would call that a realistic. And then a safety is a school that you might exceed requirements for. Maybe a very higher percentage acceptance rate. In some cases, if students applying out of state from Massachusetts, applying to colleges in other states, you have a higher likelihood to be accepted too. So again, this is going to be done all through research and consultation. So just know we're going to be categorizing these schools and juniors. These are terms you're going to start to hear as you're meeting with your counselor. One thing that's a big, big help, and I know we talk about Naviance all the time, but it's got a lot of good data, okay? It's a lot of good information. We want students to be able to make the best decision possible because when you're applying to colleges, you're going to pay an application fee for every college you apply to, just so, again, juniors, so you're aware. So we want you to make sure you're doing that in a way that gives you the best amount of options. Most colleges will charge anywhere from $50 upwards of $100 per school. So keep that in mind. So what Naviance does is it gives a representation of students accepted at particular colleges and universities, and it's using your information, student information. So if you log into Naviance now, in juniors, you've taken the PSAT, most of you have taken it twice now, and you have a GPA in Naviance as well. So what this does is it will show where you fall. So for example, that little blue body would represent you, the student, okay? And then you can see the access point, and left-hand side, the average, in the school we're talking about, you can see is New York University. On the left, the average GPA was a 3.84. weighted GPA, and average SAT with the 1600 scale, the average was 1438. It's competitive. It's a competitive school. And you can see where the student falls in comparison to the red X's. We don't have the legend that shows you what that means, but those mean denied. And the green square means accepted. The circle around it means early action or early decision. And the diamond, I believe that means waitlisted. Is that correct? So, again, this is just a quick way to gain an understanding of where you might fall. And again, we're categorizing colleges, so we would probably say to this student that this is probably going to be a reach, but we wouldn't close the door on it because we do look at other information besides transcript, depending on NYU, depending on the major, sometimes that can play into it. We're going to talk, again, students are going to be writing an essay. So this is definitely a good point to start, okay? Can we go to the next one? That's a good point. Yep, and this data is Burlington High School students. This is not a national or state norming normed population. It is just Burlington High School students. It has to be a minimum of 5. So it goes back 3 years. Yeah. It must be more than whatever 10 students that applied for that university. 3 years. Yeah. Goes back 3 years. Okay? And it needs to be a minimum of 5 total, because at that point, I think people could try to figure it out, not that they would, but so we do, there is a minimum that we put in there. So this is Framingham State. Again, you know, statistically, the student has a high likelihood to get in, but you can see we have a lot more students apply because it's a Massachusetts public university. And so you can see the averages, 3.06, 1093 on the SATs. All right, so again, it just gives a good visual representation. This is, again, it's in the system, it's in Naviance. Right now, juniors, what it would be doing, though, is it would be pulling your PSAT scores and using those as the data point. Most students, I would say 90% plus that have taken the PSAT sophomore and junior year, when they're pretty comfortable when they get to the SAT, so we see a little increase. So again, with Mass public colleges and universities, and juniors that are here, I'm sure you hear about these, or you've heard about them, you know, through your school experience, but Massachusetts has the UMass system, which is UMass Amherst, Boston, UMass Dartmouth, UMass Lowell. Then there are the state universities, which I think we have those on another slide, so I won't attempt to name them all right now, but you know, Westfield, Salem, Framingham, Fitchburg, Mass College of Liberal Arts. So there's a number of state universities. So because you all pay taxes in this state, they're funded through state taxes, so you're paying less of a tuition than someone coming from out of state. In addition to that, they're very transparent on their selection process. Okay, they pretty much lay out there exactly how they're going about deciding on incoming students. Mass Higher Ed is a very useful website. You might want to jot that down. That lists all the public colleges and university information. So minimum requirements at these schools are listed here. So juniors that are here, you'll probably notice those are our graduation requirements, our minimum graduation requirements. Okay, so Burlington High School students will leave here usually exceeding these requirements, but at the very least, the graduation requirements are satisfying this requirement. Again, we talked about competitive schools, lower percentage of acceptance. They will look for more than just the minimum. And these are some of the courses and things that they'll be looking at. Dual enrollment, we usually mention dual enrollment at different planning nights that we have and different breakfasts that we've had over the years. Dual enrollment here at Burlington High is basically a high school course. So juniors like honors psychology, the AP computer science classes, human anatomy. Oh, they're right here. Okay. I thought I was going on memory there. So just dual enrollment is basically the teacher of these courses is also an adjunct professor at Middlesex Community College. Okay? The teacher has been approved to teach this course. If the student meets the prerequisites for the course, you can get not only your high school credit, but college credit. All right? So that's actual credit. It's a pretty good program. It's increasing in popularity, and that's another thing colleges are starting to look at, dual enrollment classes. The math sequence you're in, we'd like you to be able to get to pre-calculus or calculus. Biochem and physics is pretty standard, especially if you're considering engineering. They're definitely going to want to see that physics. We'll have students, again, that will expand beyond those science areas. 3 or 4 years in the same world language. Senior year, don't back down. It's not the time to back down on your schedule. It's time to continue to take more rigorous classes. So colleges are looking at those types of trends. They want to see an upward trend. And the last comment was just about some colleges may have specific requirements. Like I said, if you're going to WPI to major in engineering, you don't have physics on your transcript, that's probably not going to bode well. So you want to make sure you're taking the appropriate classes. So the course selection process, believe it or not, will start next week. The counseling staff, we're going to be meeting with all grade levels, except seniors, to talk about choosing courses for next year. And it's all online, and I think juniors have already been through the process a couple of times, so you probably have a good handle on that. And we just want you to make sure you're paying attention to the information that's being presented to you about program of studies, about courses, and we want to make sure you're in a good position to choose courses that you'd like to take. Additional opportunities. And over the years, it really has increased in terms of what students can do to expand beyond what we offer at the high school. As I said, the dual enrollment program is growing. Virtual high school or Edgenuity, those are two online programs. Have any juniors heard of virtual high school? No one wants to admit it maybe. So we have about 20 or 30 students each year that will participate in virtual high school, and that's so they can expand beyond what we offer. If you want to be a veterinarian, you can take courses in veterinary medicine. There are a variety of humanities courses, there's screenwriting courses, there's different types of literature courses, they have Irish literature courses, they have several different types of computer science courses. So it really does open up your ability to take some other offerings. Yes? Are there any plans to expand dual enrollment to AP?
Well, no, to higher level. In other words, instead of taking AP, to do a higher level programming class with dual enrollment.
Right now, many of the AP computer science courses are now dual enrollment. If that makes sense. So it's like double dipping. You could get the AP weight plus the dual enrollment, but they're kind of butting heads to some extent because AP, you take a test in May and you have to get a high enough score to use that for college, whereas dual enrollment, you're just enrolling in the course, getting a grade, and getting the actual credit. So they are competing against each other. So I do think, though, for the non-AP dual enrollment courses like programming, calculus, psychology, Latin, anatomy and physiology, those courses I think have, I think they've really, not that they weren't rigorous before, but now they're in line with, Middlesex Community College, which is a college, and they're more in line with a college course. So it's helped to improve those offerings. So there it is, the state universities. The other thing I should mention is the state universities, with their transparency, as I said, they want students to 4 years of math, 4 years of English, 3 history, 3 science, 2 world language. In addition to that, they want your GPA to be a minimum of 2.0. Minimum of 2.0. That would be a weighted GPA calculated very similar to how we calculated at Burlington High School. Okay, so we give extra weight for honors and AP. So if you get an A in a college prep, A in a college prep would be a 3.0. I'm sorry, a 4.0. An A in an honors, 4.5. An A in an AP is a 5.0. So essentially, they use that same system. So they're going to recalculate the GPA. They only include the courses that they require for acceptance. We use all the courses that are leveled. They don't necessarily do that. So just know they're going to recalculate, and then depending on where you fall, you need a minimum 2.0. And if you're in between 2.0 to 3.0, this is when they're going to look at the SAT or ACT scores, and you'll hear more about SAT and ACT a little later. They want you to hit a minimum score on the SATs. Okay, so for example, if you had a 285, well, you're below the 3.0 threshold, your SAT needs to be a 1030. Okay, so this is all spelled out on the Mass Higher Ed website. I think we even put some information in your packet. Some state schools do tend to be more competitive than others, just so you know. So this is a minimum requirement. Because you meet it does not mean you're going to be accepted. Yes? Some colleges are going that route. If you're over a 3.0, they won't require you to submit SATs. But even those colleges that do have told us, depending on the major, they're still going to look. So for example, if you're going to Salem State to major in nursing, they're still looking at your SATs even if you're a 3.6. All right, so really it kind of depends on the program. I know UMass Lowell's doing it as well, but I think if you're majoring in engineering at U Lowell, they're still going to want to see, even if you're over that 3.0 threshold, they're still going to want to see the SATs. So I think it kind of depends on the program in the school. So just because you're over it doesn't mean that they're not going to look at it. This is just a transfer block. This is really, believe it or not, this is the goal eventually for the high school. We would love to be able to have enough dual enrollment so if a student chooses to, they could leave here with 15 credits or more. That's kind of the goal here. However, this is just explaining the process and the program. It's an agreement that the Massachusetts community colleges have with Mass public colleges and universities. So basically, if you go to a community college for 2 years and achieve 2.5 or better, you can automatically transfer to a state school. Okay? You don't even fill out an application. That can be a big cost savings, depending on your situation. You ultimately get the degree from that school that you end up at. And this articulation agreement is not just for Mass public colleges and universities. I know Merrimack, Suffolk, there might be another private school that also honor this articulation agreement. And also, if you're up over a 3.0, you're going to get a 10% off the tuition. So what we're finding more and more is, depending on the major, students are starting out at a community college to save money and then transferring. We do see that happen in some cases. Any questions on what I've covered? Excuse me? It's an automatic. Yep. What they're finding, though, is, I think they really, again, they want you to get that. Sometimes it doesn't take 2, sometimes it might take 3, depending on the situation. But if you're hitting this program, the 15 or 30, I thought it was 30 credits. Oh, 1 of 15, yeah. So I think it's right around 30 credits. So if you're hitting that 30 credits, again, it's an automatic transfer. You might have to do a very simple application. Any other questions? All right, Mrs. Wojtasek. Oh, Mrs. Leary's jumping in.
I just want to jump in and say one more thing about how the course selection process ties into doing college visits and talking to admissions reps. So as we said, next week starts the course selection process for senior year, and it's a month-long process. When you do visits and when you talk to admissions reps, especially if you're going into a competitive program, but regardless of the program, it's important to ask questions about what they want to see on your transcript, what courses are important to take in high school. So that way you can make sure that you're choosing the right courses for senior year to set yourself up to get accepted into the school of your choice. So that's really important to know that. As many of you know at this point, you can come in over the summer. We're here during the summer to make schedule changes, and we have indeed had rising seniors come in and say, I went on a tour, the rep told me I should be taking this course, so I'm going to rearrange my schedule. So it's important to know that as well. Ms. Wojtasek.
Thank you. Everybody take a deep breath. We're going to get through this. And so much, we don't expect you to remember all this information. We have a great packet, but we also have a guidance blog, and please reach out to us. It's a difficult, stressful process, but we're here for you every step of the way. I'm going to talk a little bit about the factors in the admissions process. The key one, the most important one, is our transcript, our academic record. And we talk to students each year about their academic record, and we're going to actually show you what it looks like. The next piece, probably the one that produces the most stress, is standardized testing, and we will be going into a great deal of depth with standardized testing. And then, of course, the teacher letter of recommendations and the guidance letter of recommendation. Those are crucial pieces as well. Extracurricular activities. This spring and into senior year, we talk a lot about building your activities list, helping students with that. And we always tell our students, it's not about this lengthy activity list, it's about the depth of your activities and showing that long-term commitment, something that you've done over 3-4 years, and maybe something you've grown with, something that you've started off as a member and then became maybe an officer in that club or activity. We have also the personal essay, and we are very lucky to have an English department and senior teachers that work with all of our students in really perfecting that essay and crafting a beautiful piece of work to send along. But it's something that we also ask our students to begin working on in the summer. Right? Writing is a process that evolves, so the earlier that you start, I think the better the outcome will be. And then, of course, electronic presence. We ask our students to be mindful of what you're putting out there, right? Schools will actually, there's some admissions people have told us when they communicate with students, they like to kind of get that feel of that student voice, so be mindful how you're replying, capital letters and things like that. So just be aware of what you're putting out there in social media and also in your communication with admissions people. So this is the top of the transcript. So this is a document that colleges will see. Of course, it will have your student's name, it will have the contact information, it will have the total amount of credits that the student has earned while they've been here with us. It will have their weighted GPA, and we can go on to the body of the transcript. So if you look at the first square on the left-hand side, it says grade 9. It has the course names listed. Then the next column has the level of the course. So for example, it says French 2, level honors. Then it says grade, B+, and then the credits that the student earned for that class, which is 5 credits. So at the end of that first box for that freshman year, it has the total amount of credits that the student earned that year. And then it goes on year by year. So I always tell my students that if they have a bad quarter, or maybe a comment that we're necessarily happy with, it's okay. The only thing that will show up on your transcript is that final grade. The bottom of the transcript. So the bottom part of the transcript has our grading system, out of our passing grades. It has also the grade key, and then the course levels, what they mean, and it will have the counselor's information, who the student's counselor is. We'll go on to the next one. Our school profile. It's sent with the transcript, and we I would say 99% of the time we send this information electronically. It has our contact information. It has a description of Burlington overall. What is our community like? You know, how many students are graduating, our graduation requirements that Mr. Adebato talked about earlier, our curriculum, what kind of curriculum do we offer here, how many AP classes, honors classes, what kind of electives, the plans for our graduation seniors from the previous year, so the percentage of students that went to a four-year college, to a two-year college, and other options that students have taken, like military or technical schools. Then we have our test score information, so the average scores for SATs, ACTs, APs, and the ranges. Then we have specific information about the class, the current, you know, that class specifically in their GPAs, and we're going to show you a graph of that in a little bit. And then our GPA calculation formula. We can go to the next one. And all of this is on our guidance website, so you can look at it thoroughly. Yes? So, and Mr. Adebayo talked about this a little bit earlier. For example, in an AP class is going to have more weight than it would be in an honors class. So it gives you extra points. And all that calculation is actually right on our blog if you wanted to take a look at it on the guidance.
Unweighted would be if you got an A, regardless of the level, it would always be a 4.0. So unweighted. No,
We just put weighted. Always put weighted on there. And Mr. Adebato mentioned earlier, depending on the schools, oftentimes recalculate, and they take a look at the classes that they're, you know, the most focused on. But for our calculation, it always includes the weight. So if you take a look at, this is last year's seniors class, and it has the weighted GPA distribution across the entire class. So we don't do a class rank, but it gives you an idea how many students had GPAs in that range. Okay? And then we're going to talk a little bit about testing. Any questions and all that information? Again, it is in our guidance blog, so please refer to it and reach out if we can be of help.
Real quick, while we're talking about GPA, I just wanted to add, when you're picking classes and when we talk to different colleges, they consistently tell us that your child needs to preserve their GPA, meaning don't take 17 AP classes if you're not going to do well in them. Have more of a balance and do well in what you take. Preserve the GPA. There are some colleges who don't recalculate, so they're really going to just really look at the GPA we give. So you want to make sure that GPA stays up. Molly, are you up?
I'm going to get sick of hearing me. We normally have more staff doing these. Okay, so the transcript is always the most important piece of the application. Next comes admission testing. And this is a general timeline for testing. So any students who took the PSAT, we really urge juniors to take both the PSAT and the pre-ACT in the fall so that they can compare those results and see if there's one that was stronger for them so that they can focus in on that test. Colleges will accept either the ACT or the SAT. They don't show any preference to either test. And believe it or not, the SAT has always been more popular on the East Coast, so that's why we tend to hear more about that. And Burlington is a host site for the SAT, not the ACT. Nationally, the ACT is actually more popular. More students are taking the ACT. So senior year, so we encourage all students to take at least one of these tests by the end of senior year, and they still have opportunities to take another test early in senior year as well. Even if they apply early action or early decision, they're still in August SAT, there's an October, there's a September ACT. So generally speaking, taking a test twice is sufficient. There's really no data that taking it any more than 2 times raises students' scores that significantly. That being said, if you wish to take it a 3rd time, you know, that's a individual decision, a family decision. More and more schools are going test optional. There is a complete list on this website, fairtest.org. And when a college says that they are test optional, they truly are test optional. I know, people are a little hesitant and they often have that question, but they truly are test optional. The thing to look out for, though, is even if a college is test optional, they may not be for certain majors. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. SAT versus HCT. The SAT was revamped. It's been several years now. I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. It was completely revamped, and it looks much more like the ACT now. So they are pretty similar. I would say on the SAT, there is a higher level of math. There's a greater focus on data analysis and problem solving. With ACT, there's a greater focus on geometry and trig. And then in terms of reading passages, there tends to be a heavier focus with reading of history and social studies related passages, whereas the ACT, it's more science reading. So those are some of the significant differences there. We can't tell a student which one they're going to do better on. Taking practice exams, like if you can take, there are online combo exams that you can take. Kaplan offers some of those throughout the school year. And then some students take both tests if they're able to, if they're financially able to, if they have the time and don't mind taking additional tests, they might take both and just see which one they do better on. But please make sure you do at least one exam before the end of junior year. That's a goal. And then subject tests, they are really only required for very selective schools. They are 1-hour exams in specific subjects. They're offered on the same day as the SAT. So if students apply to any colleges that require a subject test, that's important to know when planning for this spring, when you're going to take the test, because you will have to set aside 2 different test dates, one for the SAT and then one for the subject test that you might have to take. And also, in my first meeting with students, I share, I encourage them to start planning now for when they want to take the exams, because you do have to think about things such as athletics, or there was a year or two where the prom ended up being the night before an SAT. So thankfully that doesn't happen anymore. They try to avoid that. But just things to think about. So you do want to start looking at those dates for this spring and planning when you can take your exam. Oh, and so these are equal to, so the ACT does not have any subject tests, but if you take the ACT with writing, then colleges will look at them equally. Okay, and both tests have a writing option. We do recommend taking the exam at least once with the writing portion, because you may end up applying to a college that requires the writing portion. And we would hate for you to have to scramble last minute next fall to take the test again with writing because you decided to apply to a school that required the writing. Did somebody have a question? Yes, at least once before the end of the year. Some students want it all done by the end of this year so that they don't have to do it in senior year, and that's a personal decision. The more schooling you have, the more likely, you are to do a little bit better. But yeah, that's a personal decision. But we recommend at least once. Yes. Oh, yes. So the March SAT, a good deadline. That's the deadline that's coming up the soonest. It's a week from tomorrow is the registration deadline. And so students are required to go to the website and register themselves. And it does take some time. You have to upload a photo. You need a credit card handy. It's the College Board website. I believe it's listed on one of these slides or in your packet, but the College Board is the company who runs the SAT, and then actstudent.org is the website where you would register for an ACT. And register early to get a spot in Burlington, because we tend to fill up in the spring as well, so you might get pushed to another local high school. Kaplan. So we do host, Kaplan uses our facility to host test prep courses and They do have, they offer them at a reduced rate for BHS students. But we do have a list of test prep resources ranging from courses to free online resources, a whole range, and that's still on our blog, right? Yes, okay. And the Kaplan information, is that in their packet, or Kaplan was mailed home? Okay, I believe was that mailed home with PSAT results? Okay, back in December. Yeah. So when you register for the test, you are either registering to take the basic test or the test with the writing section. So you're going to be sitting a longer time to take the writing section, and it does cost more money to take the writing section. Because some colleges might require it. Yes. So that's just important to know when you're doing your research and you're narrowing down your list of schools. Some of your schools might require you to take the SAT with writing. And if you didn't do that, you'll need to set up another time to take the test with the writing so that you have a chance of getting accepted there. Yes. Yep. Okay, so another factor is extracurriculars. Extracurriculars are important. There is a section of any application that requires students to fill out a list of their activities, what they have done outside of academics, all throughout high school. And to prepare students for that, we have them create an activity list. And we provide them with a sample so that they can format it accordingly. And we usually have a deadline in the spring. And we use it in-house for scholarship purposes and for award purposes, such as the Junior Book Awards, which will be coming up in the spring. So we typically make a deadline around April for having students submit an activity list to us. And at this point, as juniors, it's a draft because we want them to have started it and have this draft so that senior year, all they need to do is just update it with any additions in their senior year, any new updates. Recommendations, another part of the application process. So a general rule of thumb would be to think of two core academic teachers to write letters for you. And many colleges require a letter from the counselor. Okay, so you do have to ask for the students have to ask for these in person, and a general rule of thumb is giving people at least a month's notice. We put a lot of time and effort into these letters. They're not form letters, which may have happened, 20, 30 years ago. So some do's and don'ts: meet with your counselor often and complete their requirements. The counselors have questionnaires. I even require a parent questionnaire as well. Ask teachers in major subjects. You may ask teachers in elective areas, but that should never be your primary letter, the student's primary letter. Okay, that could be an extra letter, maybe a third letter. Maybe you have a core subject teacher, your counselor, and an elective teacher. And the same goes for an advisor or a coach. That doesn't take the place of a core subject recommendation either. You may consider asking people you know outside of school, not someone you know personally, not a relative, but maybe your boss if you have a part-time job. Or maybe you took a summer course or did a little summer internship, so a supervisor there. And that letter, there's a separate process for getting that to us so that we can send it out. But that, those instructions will come with time. But it is something students can absolutely consider. Some teachers will have their own requirements. I know of at least one English teacher who requires students to write an essay requesting the letter. So it's important to follow through on any requirements that the teacher may have. And some teachers cap the number of letters that they write as well. So they may write a maximum of 10 or 15 letters. So that's why another reason it's important to ask early. Do not get too many letters. You will not be able to ask 5 different people and then expect to read them and choose the best 3. It doesn't work that way. All letters are should be, from the get-go, considered confidential. They will get uploaded directly to Naviance, and they will be submitted to colleges through Naviance. So there won't be an opportunity to read them. And don't assume the most effective letter comes from the class in which you got the highest grade, okay? Maybe your grade was a little bit lower, but you had a great relationship with that teacher and you worked your butt off for that grade. You really earned it. And we encourage students to send thank yous because people are, writing these letters on their personal time typically. Yes. Yes, absolutely. So is there a sample in their packet? A sample copy? Yes, so we have different headings that would include awards, leadership positions, extracurriculars, community service, part-time employment. Some students even add a hobbies section. Yep. Yes, thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. Yes, because that is the last full year of education they have before they end up applying. So that is absolutely what we tell them to focus on. Yep. Yes, yes. You can. Yes, we encourage students to start asking at the end. At the end of this year. The college essay, another piece to the application. We encourage students to start drafting over the summer. We do, in our meetings with juniors, we introduce them to the common application. We have them create an account, and that this way they get to view the common application essay prompts. And even if you don't have a common application account, you can just Google it. You can Google common application essay prompts, and you will be able to get a preview of them right now. So you can start brainstorming as early as tonight if you really wanted to. But we do encourage students to start drafting over the summer. Senior English teachers do incorporate it into the curriculum, and they do help students out with them. But sometimes students do not want to wait that long, especially if they're planning to apply early action, which comes up November 1st, November 15th. We will have a college essay day sponsored by NHS, held in May. Which can be really helpful. We usually get a panel of admissions reps from local schools to give their feedback and give plenty of advice about the essay process. And we do, just last year, we started a summer college boot camp here at BHS for a 4-hour block on a day in August. And Miss Nedishin, one of our English teachers, was here last year with us doing a workshop to help students out with their essays, which was a great addition. So of course, there's the application itself, which students will be required to fill out. We do get them started in small groups, as I said. So the common application, for those of you who have not heard of it, is one application, if this is your oldest child, it's one application that students can fill out and submit to schools. It is accepted by many, many schools across the country, however, not all of them. So there may be instances where students need to do the common application for some of their schools, but then in addition might need to do some private applications for other schools who are not on the common application. So we do get them started. We have them create an account before the end of this year so they can start plugging away at it. They save it and they keep working on it on their own time as well. It's made up of the application itself, sometimes some supplements depending on where they apply. And those are some additional questions and pages, possibly an additional essay or short answer they may have to do. The website is right up here, commonapp.org, and it can be started this year. You used to have to wait until senior year, but as I said, we get them started this year. So the different admissions options, so I usually encourage students to be thinking about this over the summer, this year, and then through the end of the summer, so that when they come back in September, they know when they want to apply to college. If they are going to apply regular decision, which is typically January 1st and later, or if they're going to apply early action or early decision, which typically starts, for some of the southern schools, it's as early as October 15th. Some of those North and South Carolina schools have October 15th. General deadlines for early tend to be November 1st, November 15th. The difference between early action and early decision, if you forget or are not aware, is that early action is just a way of applying early in junior year and finding out early. Typically around the December vacation or early January is when students find out, and they still have until May 1st to decide where they're going, so it's not binding. Early decision is the binding option where students have to sign a contract with their parent and with their counselor. It means they have a top choice school that they know they can afford and they really want to attend. Rolling admission is slightly different, where it's they do not give a set deadline and wait for a whole application pool to compare the students. They just review your application individually as it comes in, so kind of a first come, first serve basis. Once they fill up their freshman class, they no longer accept any more applications. It doesn't mean the school is any easier to get into. It's just a different process for admission. So this is our summary of end of the year tasks that juniors can focus in on. We do give them to-do lists. We want them to have a list of potential schools in Naviance that we can view, complete their activity list, which will have a deadline in April, ask teachers for letters of recommendation, and ask your counselor if you know for sure that you need one or you want one from your counselor. Begin any requirements that your counselor may have, and create a Common App account and begin filling out that application. So we do support them through all of this in our small group meetings. What's that? How parents can help. So we do ask that parents let their child drive the bus, meaning letting them make contacts with any admissions reps, having the students complete the task and communicate with their counselor. The students should be filling out their applications, not parents. Do discuss restrictions up front. So an example of this might be, if you are, as a parent, are thinking, my son or daughter won't be going to school in California, that's just not an option. Discuss that up front so that they are not getting their heart set on that. Okay, so that's an example of that. Don't limit choices based on sticker fee. So you never know what kind of merit or financial aid you're going to get. So I know some of those sticker prices can be alarming when you first see them. But in many instances, private schools can get down to a state school price. So just, keep that in mind as well. Do remind your teen of deadlines. That is helpful. And we do encourage college visits, whether it's with you or, with a group of friends or both. And try to limit conversations to one time a week. This is something we've recommended over the years now that can be helpful so that your child isn't viewing you as nagging them. And if you set aside time, maybe every Sunday night, we're going to discuss this, then it's a relief for you as a parent because okay, I know I'll get some answers on Sunday night, hopefully. But for them also, it can be a relief that they know they're not going to be asked about this every single day. And don't create accounts on behalf of your daughter or son. So the Common App account or even the College Board account, things like that, because it does create problems when we meet with students. It can hold things up. Ms. Rogers is next.
Thank you, Ms. Leary. Hi, everyone. I'm Jackie Rogers, and I'm probably new to most of you. I am a new staff member here at the high school, and I am a school adjustment counselor in the building. So that means my role is slightly different than the wonderful guidance counselors we have here sharing their expertise tonight. So my role is really in response to mental health and helping students manage stress. And I'm sure that we can all imagine that the college application process has a kind of a direct correlation with stress levels, and they tend to increase around this time, which I'm sure is not a surprise to those of you students and families sitting there today. So I'm just going to briefly talk about some kind of social emotional qualities And we have it here as social emotional maturity, and I also like to think about it as kind of readiness. And these are skills that for students are helpful in managing the process, and are also skills that we want to, as the support people in students' lives, help them to cultivate, as their family members and as their counselors here. So some of these skills include conscientiousness, being thoughtful about the process, thinking ahead to different schools that might be a best fit. Also being conscientious in terms of staying in communication with guidance counselors. I think we also spoke about this in terms of looking for the letters of reference and communicating kind of openly and proactively with teachers in advance, which also ties into self-management. So we really want to encourage students at this point in their life to be independent, and of course with support as needed, but to the extent that students can kind of be on top of their deadlines, make their own checklists, again with some help. But we really want to encourage students to kind of seek this out for themselves, which connects with resilience as well. And I think that this is a time where students have to be particularly resilient because there's a lot of pressure, and I'm sure you students in the audience, may have heard of, seniors talking about where they've been accepted, where they're applying, and it can be hard not to kind of feed into that pressure cooker and feel like our self-worth is really tied in with that college acceptance letter or the waitlist letter or not getting into a certain school. The more we can remember to separate ourself and our self-worth from where we land in college, the better. And that's not to say that you shouldn't be ambitious and aim high, and that you shouldn't continue to persevere, because certainly resilience means maybe getting knocked down and then picking ourselves up and continuing with that process. But I just kind of want us to keep that in mind. Risk management, so all this means is really to kind of pay attention to your own stress levels for students, and to kind of figure out where you're at and when you might need support. And this is also a place where, of course, parents and primary caregivers play a really crucial role. I was thinking to what Ms. Leary shared about this idea of limiting maybe college conversations to once a week. That directly ties in with trying to promote some social emotional wellness during this time, which we know can be stressful. And I really can't say enough, if and when you as a student feel like the stress is getting overwhelming, please reach out. And to parents and primary caregivers, please check in. So if there are like 2 catchphrases here, check in and reach out. So check in and reach out. Just keep that in mind. I am very available for check-ins. I happen to meet with a lot of seniors. My office is busy with students every day. And seniors certainly make up a portion of that. So please never hesitate to be in touch, because your emotional well-being is really first and foremost, and we never want someone out there struggling and not getting the support they need. Last but not least, kind of self-acceptance and an open mindset. I think all of that ties into this idea of kind of getting the support that you may need, and also keeping an open mind to your options. So I know sometimes we might kind of pin our hopes and dreams on one particular school, but I've seen just time and time again, there are a range of options available for students to kind of get to the same endpoint, even if they've had this one particular institution in their mind for years and years. There are so many places where you can go and kind of pursue that same major and end up in a really kind of positive place. So don't hesitate to reach out, and that's really it for me. So thank you. All right, and I think we're on to Ms. Smith.
Great. We don't have much more time here. So before we talk about how are we paying for college, I just want to talk about 3 different unique situations that don't cover the majority of students, but we just wanted to point out a couple things. If your child has a documented disability and gets services in high school, they potentially could qualify for services in college as well. Each college has different requirements. You need to check out the process, the requirements. If testing is involved, like academics, learning disability, usually it has to be within a certain number of years, so you just need to make sure you're on top of that. If your child has a learning disability, they may also qualify, or any disability potentially, they may qualify for an exemption from the, remember that SAT thing from that the state requires with that GPA chart? they could potentially be waived from that GPA or that SAT requirement, the testing requirement, if they have a documented disability. So just check that. Next is athletes. If your child is plans to play Division I or Division II sports, not Division III sports, not junior college, not community college, but if they're looking to play Division I or Division II, they need to register through the NCAA clearinghouse. And they also have a sliding scale with GPA and SAT, ACT scores. So you need to have minimum requirements and certain class requirements. So you want to make sure if you're Division I or II, you pick the right classes. Okay? Gap year. Now, in the context of having lots of options after high school, some people, 90% of our students go on to 4-year, 2-year colleges. We also have a good chunk that go on to vocational schools. We have a certain percentage that go on to the military, some who work. But we also have some who consider gap years. So since it's not necessarily something that's a hugely popular thing, I just wanted to introduce you to this idea. A gap year is time intentionally taken off. So your child may not quite be ready for college, but they want to do something. And this is maybe an intentional time taken off after high school where they volunteer in the U.S. or abroad, language immersion, work exchange programs, outward bound, or there are some that go through different organizations and do a semester. So it might be on a boat, a semester at sea, so semester. Programs vary widely in terms of their time frame, their cost, their requirements to participate. So usually there's a lot of information about this online, and we have a link on our guidance website that has information about that also. But what we still recommend, regardless if you want to take time off, regardless if you want to work, if you want to do a gap year, we still recommend that students still get letters of recommendation, at least one, because later, within a couple years, they might want to go to college. So you want to have that stuff handy just in case. Still get a letter of recommendation, and still it would be helpful still to get an SAT under your belt. We've seen some students who think that this is what they want to do and they change their mind. So you want to make sure you have all that stuff just in case. Okay. College affordability, because we know it's getting to be pricey. What this is not meant to just get the main thing you want to get out of this slide is you notice state schools at the top, UMass's and then the state universities. The bottom are a lot more private schools. It looks like UMass Amherst and the state schools, or the UMasses and the state universities, are much cheaper in terms of tuition and fees. Tuition is the cost to take classes, and then they also have associated fees that kind of go along with that, so tuition and fees. And then on top of that is room and board. Room, living there, board is eating there. And so tuition and fees, there's a big difference between the top and the bottom. However, what we wanted to point out is, like Mrs. Leary alluded to earlier, is even though it looks like UMass Amherst or UMasses and the state universities are cheaper, the initial sticker price might look like the state universities, the public schools are cheaper. However, let's keep in mind that people are paying a lot more money to these private schools. They have endowments, they have investments, they have big ticket donors, they have big time money that they can give away. I can appreciate where you're all coming from because I have a senior, and so believe me, ticket price is a big deal. And one of the schools my son was looking at, Roger Williams, for example, I think their total sticker price with tuition and fees plus room and board was something like $56,000. If you go on their financial aid website and you look at their net price calendar, you can plug in certain information and they'll give you an estimate on how much it will cost. Roger Williams said that their average cost was $36,000. Now, if you made your judgment based solely on the price of Roger Williams' initial sticker price, you wouldn't know that. Like $36,000 might be much more in your ballpark. Don't get me wrong, it's still pricey, I get that. But my point is, especially depending on what your family income is, that you might qualify for merit scholarships at certain colleges. Smith College is an all-girls school in Western Mass. They have some scholarships that cover everything. So my point is, private schools do have a lot of money to give away, so don't totally rule them out when you're applying. And also, Mr. Adebato had talked about the 2+2, the A to B, the associates to bachelors in Middlesex. I just wanted to point out that Middlesex Community College is about 7,400 right now. So that would be about how much, if you did decide you wanted to take advantage of that, this is a chart that they had available just to show you how much you would save, should you want to do your first couple years somewhere and then transfer someplace else. Okay? So types of aid. Scholarships and grants. Scholarships and grants, that's free money you don't have to do anything for. Some of that is based on your family income. So some of that is need-based. That's called need-based aid. And some of that is merit-based. So if it's merit-based, when you apply, the admissions counselor will see that you have a 3.3 GPA. That qualifies you automatically to X amount of money. Or you played a certain sport, or maybe your ethnicity qualifies you for something, or if you go to Assumption College and you play the organ, you are qualified for a entire free tuition, should you want to play the organ for their church stuff. Just FYI, in case you play the organ. Grants also, similarly, that's free money you don't have to pay back. Loans, subsidized, unsubsidized, when you fill out your financial aid forms, we're going to talk about that next, that will, they'll also let you know how much money you qualify for in loans. You have to fill out the forms in order to qualify for the loans. Subsidized, the government covers your interest while you're in college at no extra cost. Work study, that's money that the college will put aside to help your student earn in a job while you're in college. So $2,000 work study would mean you can earn up to $2,000. What you should be aware is they'll get it in a paycheck, so you can use it to go to Chipotle or you can use it to pay off your tuition. So when you see that on financial aid, just something to be aware of. Okay. So in order to qualify for financial aid, and now this is not merit-based. Merit-based is just your grades, your certain qualities. If you want, you should always fill out the FAFSA. There are some scholarships where even if you say, we are never going to qualify for financial aid, certain scholarships are contingent on you filling out the FAFSA. That is available to you in October. So when you're filling out your taxes this year, just make sure they're in an accessible place for you to start to use this in starting in October. And if you look at the bottom under FAFSA Day, if you need help with filling out your FAFSA, we have different college professionals and different financial people from different colleges who volunteer their time and come here. Last year, FAFSA Day was in November, so be looking for that this November. Next year, when you come back to school, you're going to hit the ground running. Your student's going to hit the ground running. When we gave you that list of things that students need to have by junior year, if they want to save some sanity, let me tell you, have a lot done before they start senior year. Senior year is very busy with the whole application stuff. The more they can get done before they start senior year, the better. Last year, financial aid night was October 3rd. So that's going to come quickly. And then June 11th of this year is Financial Aid 101, and they may also go through some of this. I'm just giving you the overview. Some private schools, not only almost everybody requires a FAFSA, but some people also require the CSS profile. So just be aware of that. When your child is keeping track of all the things each college needs, one of the things that you can help with is keeping track of what they're going to need financially, or what financial aid forms they need. Okay? Financial aid can come from a lot of different places: federal government, state government, colleges, universities, different private agencies. Okay? For example, locally, just so you are aware of how this works, so locally, I'm going to skip down to the third, adopt a class. That is one where if you volunteer 2 hours a year, you will qualify for an adopt a class scholarship. The more you volunteer, the more you're eligible for certain higher level scholarships. So pretty much the scholarships are pretty much broken down into, do they have their own application form for the scholarship, or do they not? And do they choose to use a general form like Scholarship America? It's Burlington Community Scholarship Foundation Dollars for Scholars. There's 2 general ones. That covers $150,000 worth of scholarships. The other general one is the BHS General Scholarship. Also covers about, would you say about the same, $150,000-ish in scholarships? Something-ish, 100, 150. So lots and lots of scholarships. So those 2 are ones that you absolutely want your child to fill out. We'll talk again about this in the fall when we do the senior college planning, just to be aware of. Those are pretty much, those 2 scholarships deadlines are more like March and April. So right now you're focusing on the applications. Scholarships, there are some private scholarships that are available on Naviance, and there's some that are available in August. The bulk, though, are available more this spring of senior year. And Mr. Adebato, you want to tie this up?
And one thing for parents, too, when we, in senior year, I think this is where parents can really be a big help, too, is, seniors just get through the whole application process. They've applied to colleges, and so I think this sometimes is almost not forgotten, but the amount of effort and energy to put into this whole other application process is sometimes not there. So I think parents can certainly help with this process. So I just wanted to talk briefly about 2 scholarships that are tied to the MCAS tests. And I think scholarship's probably a word we'd have to rethink because it's more of a waiver than it is a scholarship. So there are 2 awards. The first one's called the Adams Scholarship. Again, it says scholarship, but really it's a tuition waiver. So essentially, if a student scores in the top 25% of the class, and the class being their graduating class, on the 3 MCAS tests, the math, the English, and the science, if students in the top 25%, they'll get a tuition waiver to any Mass public college or university. So it's a tuition waiver. We have the list of the tuition fees. I believe it's online through the website, but it's waiving the tuition, which is usually the lower amount. I think the amounts we were a little off on before, but let's just say UMass Amherst, for example, the tuition might be $4,000 or $5,000 per year. I don't even think it's that much. And then room, board, and fees is $20,000. So you get the waiver on the lower amount, just the tuition, not the room, board, and fees. But again, that's a savings. And that would be based on the MCAS scores. Students are informed as to whether or not they qualify in the fall of senior year. The fall of senior year. So sometime, usually in October and November, you would get a letter mailed to you. And then if you do go to a Mass public college or university, you would simply take that letter, submit it to the financial aid office, and they would take that tuition off the bill. And then I think you need to have a 3.3 or better to maintain that each year. The other MCAS option is something called the Certificate of Mastery. It's a little bit more complicated. The Adams is very simple because it's just a calculation, top 25%. This particular award, Certificate of Mastery, so there's, again, 3 MCAS tests. Students need to score advanced on one of the 3 and at least proficient on the other 2. If a student meets that criteria, then they have the option to fill out an application, and in addition to that, they have to take 2 additional tests. Okay? Those tests can be 2 AP tests. You heard about subject tests. It can be 2 subject tests. Or you can mix it up and take an AP test and a subject test. Okay? Or you can just take 1 test, be it AP or SAT subject, 1 test, and then 1 other academic achievement. That other academic achievement could be a dual enrollment course. It could be some sort of academic award the student received in the high school. There's a full list of these awards that would be mailed home to you. So sometime probably coming up in March or April, juniors that scored advanced on 1, at least proficient on the other 2 MCAS, will get a letter sent home reminding you and giving you information on the COPLIC. You actually could figure it out now, knowing your MCAS scores. Juniors, you have those scores. You already know that you've, received a science score already. In math and English, those scores were sent home. So if you wanted to look to see if you have met that requirement, you could certainly do that. But we will officially remind you in a letter sometime, probably next month. Correct. Again, you heard Mrs. Smith talk about scholarships, and so there are services out there that would offer, would ask you to pay them to help find scholarships. I would be very leery of this. A lot of the research can be done for free. So I would just recommend that when you're going through the scholarship research process, again, lots of free resources out there. The counseling staff's pretty knowledgeable as well. And I think it can be overwhelming, and so sometimes parents may want to pay someone to do that for them. But again, I would just please do your research and know what you're paying for. So this is for parents. Sorry, juniors, you can't come. You'll be in class. But this is just information that we'll be passing on through our breakfast series. The course selection process. So seniors, actually all grade levels besides seniors, are going to be going through this next Wednesday. We usually have a Google slideshow similar to what we're doing today with students, and we go over all the program of studies, changes, process, all those types of things, and we'll post that on the guidance blog. However, if you wanted to come in and hear from us, present that information, you could come to the breakfast on the 26th of February. And then we like to end the school year and start the summer with some information, again, for parents going into the summer. What are some things you can be doing over the summer as parents of juniors? You've heard a lot of information tonight, but we like that breakfast as a way to kind of remind you of everything that will be coming up throughout the summer and in the fall of senior year. So before I open it up for any questions, there's a couple things in your packet that I would like you to take a look at and hopefully fill out for us. There's a lot of information in here. We're not going to go through everything, but if you could, in the back right, there is a document that's an evaluation form. We would ask you to fill that out. Be honest, any thoughts or ideas you have for us, let us know. But we do appreciate feedback that you could provide us. The back left, parents, you've heard a lot about Naviance. It's a Naviance sign-up sheet. So parents should have their own account, shouldn't be using their student's account. You heard Mrs. Leary talk about parents not creating accounts for their student or using their child's account. Please make your own, because we do send separate emails to parents for different events, and we like to track our usage. So that can throw things off if a parent's using their child's account. So if you want to leave this as well with us. We'll take care of it. You get an email within a week with a username and password. And then the last thing I'll mention, this does not need to be returned tonight. In fact, it doesn't really need to be returned till next fall. Whoop. It's on the left-hand side. And this is a senior parent guardian questionnaire. So this, we talked a little bit about letters of recommendations. And in some cases, you might want to be able to let your child's counselor know some information about your child that they may not share with us, or something you want us to be aware of, or whatever the case may be. We would ask you to fill this out and leave this with us. Again, it helps us gather information and have a better understanding of the student so we can write them a great letter.